Hello and welcome to The Fan Show. I'm Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Shaw.
And you lot are clearly mad for poetry stories because for the second month in a row, we're visiting the 1970 series of Doctor Who, this time to examine the original Silurian story.
But fear not, newer Who fans, will touch on their 2010 return with a dollop of Madame Vastra too.
Joining us in the rubber-scented caves of Brenley Moor, our writer and YouTuber Jenny Lippmann, who's seen this episode for the first time.
First time.
Fantastic. And also writer of forthcoming Doctor Who book of infographics, numerous audios and comic books, Simon Guerrier. And you've seen this episode?
A lot of times.
Welcome both. Well, before we chat, Luke, what do we need to know about this episode?
Well, not much to be honest. It's John Pertwee's second adventure and he's been exiled to Earth and he's now with his companion, Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, a very clever scientist. And as we see early on, the pair are summoned to the research centre by the Brigadier, the head of UNIT, an organisation dedicated to investigating extraterrestrial threats on Earth. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy.
Let's talk about the artistic realisation of the Silurians. Now, personally, I really love the Silurians, the old Silurians. I have quite a soft spot for them, mainly because I think they're quite sweet. They're quite cute. I just like the way that they sort of waddle around. And Miles Taylor says, I think they're definitely one of the best monsters from 70s Who. They look very natural and of the Earth. And Andy Owen says, very monstrous. I'd love to see the modern show refine the design alongside the newer ones. So how do you guys think their design holds up today?
I think it looks fab. I always thought the new design looked I felt it looked a bit more realistic because obviously it is rubber suits back then and you've got the amazing prosthetics of now. But I sort of liked how in the modern episodes they had a more realistic way of walking around. Do you know what I mean? Because the original ones all sort of creep around, don't they? Not that I don't like that, I like a bit of creeping, but I felt like they felt a little bit more, I felt like you could empathise with them a little bit more because they seemed a bit more human as well, so you could really believe that they were sort of inhabitants of the Earth before us.
The stuff early on, where before we see a Silurian and we just see it in outline and we just see the claw and we see it silhouetted against the sunset or sunrise, whichever it is beautiful and really strange and creepy. And they are just very, very kind of weird creatures. I think the most important point is that by making them monstrous, we're much less likely to warm to them. So the Doctor's trying to find some kind of compromise to them is harder. Whereas the more human they look, the more recent versions of Silurians, the idea that we should get on with them and that we should talk to them and we might have common interests or so on, is less of a sell. It's less weird and strange for the Doctor to make friends with Silurians when they look more like us, I think.
And they've really got a distinctive movement, whether that's because the actors can see or whether that's because it's hard to walk around those costumes. But like even just the way like when they're opening doors and stuff and they're really going for it, really trying to. You really feel like they're using a muscle there. It's just I think they're so believable. They are visually one of the best, and actually just the concept of one of the best monsters in classic Who for me.
No, I think the best sci-fi, plays with what's really happening, in the real world. This episode is really interesting because, it plays with real life concerns about multiculturalism and living together. And interestingly, as you pointed out earlier, it's not an invasion from beyond. This is something that's already there. And as far as the Silurians are concerned, we're the invaders. This is effectively a story about immigration and colonialism from the point of view of the people being colonised. I really felt, this story is still relevant today. Do you agree?
I definitely agree with that. I think everything it explores, it's quite nice sort of watching it from my perspective now. What I like about Doctor Who is that it can do things like that and it can mirror what's going on in the world but do it in a way that's subtle and it's not pushing it in your face negatively, and it sort of gets into your subconscious and really makes you think.
Yeah, I think because it's a family show, it can't, it was written by a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, but it's not a manifesto of any kind, because as a family tea time show, it can only touch upon issues and kind of reference things rather than polemicise. But it's full of very odd things about the sort of political things. The thing that really strikes me is less about immigration, but about paranoia. And you've got two sides, you've got the Silurians and the humans, who are both absolutely sure that the other side is going to destroy them. So they've got to get in first. And that is a real parallel with the Cold War of the time. And the Doctor standing there kind of going, no, maybe we should talk. And there are people on both sides who are going, no, maybe we should not do this. I think one of the most interesting things about the Silurians, as well as their look, is that they're not all the same. Actually, there are individuals, and that different Silurians want different things, which is very rare for aliens in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Absolutely. At that point, and we were discussing this when we watched it, it's interesting, isn't it? This is the first time that, first of all, these aliens aren't just henchmen. They're not like the Ice Warriors or the Cybermen, where they're all they all have the same traits. They are different. You've got these parallels between, as Simon says, between the unit. Like you've got Brigadiers like, oh, we're going to blow them up, we're going to destroy them, and you've got the same in the Silurians, like, we're going to blow them up, we're going to destroy them. It's beautiful to see this happening on both sides, and you really sympathise with them both. On an Earth-based Doctor Who now, they didn't want to have an alien invasion or a crazy scientist story. It was very much, what can we do differently? And that pushed Doctor Who to be different, and it comes up with this brilliant concept. I think it's great. More stories like that.
And it's interesting how, the Doctor, isn't just dealing with an external threat, an alien. He's also having to deal with his normal allies of the humans.
There's a great sort of twist, or I'm not sure it's a twist, but there's a great moment where the Doctor has almost convinced the humans, the various military humans, and Major Baker and Brigadier both want to, but the Brigadier's disagreeing with Major Baker, but it's not that he doesn't think they should blow these things up, it's just that he wants to be in charge. And the Doctor has almost got them to agree not to do that. And Miss Dawson comes in and tells them that Dr. Quinn has been killed. Yeah. And you go, no, it's all over. It's all over. Any attempt the Doctor's made, because clearly these things are aggressive. And I think that's a really, structurally, that's a great bit of writing, because you completely understand why the Doctor's lost the argument at that point.
Well, speaking of things being sort of current, like much of Jon Pertwee's era, the Silurians is rooted in the everyday, mainly through its location and it being Earth-based, and the whole story takes place in a nuclear power research centre. I mean, are you a fan of these more real Earthbound stories?
I think so. I think I know a lot of people moan and say we need to have more things on other planets. We need to have more things that are across the universe. But I think there's something nice about being grounded. But yeah, I think there's something really nice about that, and you feel like you can associate with it more. I mean, there's always, obviously with Doctor Who, you want to have episodes where it's somewhere completely new, but I think it's also nice to have that association and think, oh, this could be happening like right under the ground right now.
There's definitely a 70s thing about authority.
Yeah. And
that's the military, and that's politics, and that's big science. All of these things that feel slightly remote.
Yeah.
There's something about Doctor Who this period. You don't go to people's homes. You don't find out that the Brigadier has a wife until Jon Pertwee's final story. You don't ever see Liz Shaw's family or what she does when she's not at work. It's all very professional, and that means that some of season 7 can feel quite cold, but also you have this thing that you're working in a world of institutions. And those institutions are scary in themselves. And I think that's a very 70s idea.
Well, I recently rewatched Chris Chibnall's Silurian two-parter, The Hungry Earth and Cold Blood, and I thought there were a lot of similarities between Doctor and the Silurians and these episodes, mainly because, the characters, it's filled with human characters who all have their own motives and their own kind of, both sides are still quite paranoid of each other. Alea is killed by the humans, and at the end of the Silurians, the Brigadier blows up the Silurians at the end of that. So there's a lot of parallels. I do think that it's fair to say that this two-parter is a modern retelling of the Silurians.
That's a very good question. I feel after watching the Silurians, I did notice, and I thought, I don't think it was deliberately a modern retelling. I think it was probably more like a love letter to the Silurians, and I think it felt different enough.
I think like that Silurian story is almost the story that will always be told. Like the Silurians, you could tell that in every time period. It's almost like the story of good and evil. It will probably keep happening forever and ever and ever.
Every 30 years, there'll be an episode where humans are digging and they find Silurians. Yeah,
and so it should. I do think that is a story that will always be told.
I think it's significant that The Hungry Earth is set in 2020. Because that's 50 years after Doctor Who and the Silurians, and they hibernate for 50 years. They set the controls to wake up again in 50 years. So are the Silurians in The Hungry Earth the same Silurians from Doctor and the Silurians, have they been modified? Has the hibernation system modified them to make them look more human in that 50-year period? I think that because that will give them an advantage. I don't know. Are there different races within Silurian culture? That seems to be a thing, but also we're told that there are bloodlines where Silurians can look identical because they all look like Neve McIntosh.
Yeah. I really enjoy the difference of let's not do a military version of this. It's actually like real people's homes and real people's children, and it's, you know, like we were saying earlier, you know, the authority of the Silurians, and it's all very military and at work and nuclear power plants and high up government officials. Whereas this time, it's how it affects a small village and the people who live there and the people who work there, and I just think that's really nice. And personally, as much as I love the Silurians, what do I kind of connect with more is those real people, which, as you say, Chibnall is so good at creating. I think that mum in The Hungry Earth, like, you know, is she one of, you know, is she like the Lawrence and the Dr. Quinn of The Hungry? Is she a villain? Well, no, actually not, because how would you react if your child was, you know, was taken by these, you know, monsters?
Well, the relationship between the Brigadier and the Doctor is really well established in this episode, and the Brigadier's militarism is really highlighted, especially at the end when he blows up, you know, the Silurians. When Harriet Jones blows up the Sycorax at the end of the Christmas invasion, the Doctor brings her down straight away. I think it's safe to say if this was modern Who, the Doctor and the Brigadier wouldn't be friends anymore. Do you think it's a shame that this isn't carried over into future episodes?
It does get referred to in the next episode, in episode 1 of The Ambassadors of Death. The Doctor makes a sulky comment about the Silurians. But you're right. The thing is that you said that the relationship between the Doctor and the Brigadier is well established. It isn't. It's the fourth Brigadier story, or fourth Lethbridge Stewart story, because he was a colonel in The Web of Fear. It's a new Doctor. It's only the second story with the third Doctor in it. And their relationship is not established. They don't get on. They have this uneasy. The Brigadier knows that the Doctor is useful to him and that he's the smartest guy in the room. But look how who's in charge? Who has the authority? The Doctor sort of parades around the Atomic Research Centre trying to unscrew things and seeing how it all works. But the Brigadier is nominally his boss and is kind of indulgent, but also has to apologise for him. They argue about what they're going to do. There's a very uneasy relationship. And the Doctor is stuck because he needs the Brigadier. He needs the facilities of UNIT. He needs somewhere to live. And, you know, as he says, he doesn't have, in Spearhead from Space, he doesn't have money, he doesn't have any of those things. He needs facilities. So there is kind of an uneasy relationship.
Yeah.
I think that's great though. Like, I really enjoyed, I mean, I don't have a huge amount of experience in it, but in the Silurians, I thought it really added an extra layer, and I was really looking forward to every scene where they were bickering, essentially. And I liked that that the Brigadier referred to them as Holmes and Watson at one point, and I liked that there was that little balance, because they were working out the clues together, but I liked that a lot of it was the Brigadier saying one thing and the Doctor saying another, and them just going against each other all the time.
I think the Doctor always would think he's Sherlock, but when the Brigadier goes, come along, Watson, and it's just like, brilliant. That is their relationship constantly. Like, they both think they're Sherlock. They both think they're the higher authority in there.
I think there's an argument for especially for this year. The Brigadier, it's his show. Yeah. And the Doctor is his companion.
It's very good. He's the scientific advisor companion.
Well, as I mentioned earlier on, there's some really scary bits in this episode, namely the plague scene. You know, it's really horrific, like, you know, the scenes in Spearhead from Space, especially as they're filmed on film. Jacob Lockett says these scenes were quite adult, which is quite surprising due to the fact that the Doctor Who was viewed as only a kids show back then. So how disturbing were these scenes for you?
I was so stressed out watching those scenes. Like, I was just absolutely blown away by it. And as you mentioned earlier about how it's in somewhere busy and somewhere so natural as a train station where anybody could be, and just all I could think was, God, everybody's gonna be going different places from a train station. It's gonna spread. And I think it was quite horrific as well. Just the abrasions on the skin as well were just so simply done, but they just looked horrendous, genuinely horrendous. And just that, partnered with how many people were dropping, I just thought it really added to the danger and of the moment, really.
One of the things is that Lawrence and Masters, who spreads the disease, do it because they're selfish. And they break quarantine and they don't listen, and so the audience is ahead of them and knows what they've got and that you've got to contain this thing, and they're by ignoring those protocols, putting everybody else in danger. And that, I think, is the most horrifying bit of it.
Yeah.
It's the bit that all those people in the railway station are killed by masters, thinking he's above those petty concerns and things.
Speaking of disturbing, I think the incidental music really stands out in this episode. It's very odd. It's quite, stark and weird and strange. Jacob Lockett says, the soundtrack was odd and a little unexpected, but so was Doctor Who at the time. Gotta love the Pertwee years. So what did you guys think about the music?
When I first watched it, I found, for me, it took away from some of the scenes with its silliness. But then, because I thought it was a kazoo, it just mega sounded like a kazoo. And I was like, what? No. And it was just, I was so distracted by the music, I felt like it took away from it. But then, from what you were telling me, was that Carrie Blyton, yes, related to Enid Blyton, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Fab.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's great.
I've outfacted you all.
Love that.
Well, not you, but...
I was on Wikipedia this morning.
But yeah, and you said that I don't want to take this fact off you.
No, go ahead.
You said that he deliberately used instruments that he thought were older. What was it?
It's called a crumhorn.
A medieval crumhorn, because the Silurians have been there a lot longer, so he deliberately used instruments that were relevant to the time. And then when I heard that, I thought, oh no, actually, I think I get it a bit more now, and I think I sort of approve of it a bit more. So yeah, first impressions, a bit much for me, but second impressions, after sort of discussing it a bit more, I think it's quite great, really.
Yeah.
After us talking about how much we want to see more of the Silurian society, I now want to see a Silurian gig where they're playing the crumb horn to all their other Silurian fans.
Well, when we spoke about Spearhead from Space, we spoke a lot about Liz Shaw. She's back again with a different haircut. And, I really took to Liz Shaw, the first time I saw her. And actually, what I think is quite awful, really, is how, there's several times in the episode where she stands up for herself and gets shut down quite a lot, by the Doctor. I was just wondering, what are your opinions on Liz Shaw?
You know what, I liked Liz, and I think she was a bit shortchanged in certain areas, but and I thought it was a bit harsh of the Doctor to be honest, if I was Liz, I would have probably punched the Doctor in the face by this point. And there were a lot of times when she would challenge him about something, and he would be like, I know what I'm doing. It's like, well, you don't though, do you? You don't know what you're doing. But I did sort of like that she tried to, because a lot of people do criticise classic companions and say they just totter about, but Liz doesn't. Even when she's staying behind, she's doing science, so she's doing forensic tests, or she's helping the Doctor out. So I like that even though she does stay behind, she's doing clever, empowering things. Yeah. So I do think, even though she's knocked down, I do think Liz is one of the more empowering companions. It's just a shame she didn't get involved in the caves a little bit more.
You can see them trying to... She does mention women's emancipation at one point. But also, the second time the Doctor says, no, you're not coming down to the caves, she goes, yes, I am, and they go down to the caves. And I worked with Caroline John. I wrote a big finish for Liz Shaw. And she's a very difficult character to write for, because she's got degrees in physics and medicine and stuff, and she's very, very smart and very, very professional. And I'm a bit lazy, so I actually spoke to a real scientist and got him to do the difficult bits of what she'd be doing. But Caroline John was saying about Silurians that in the original version, when she goes down to the caves with the Doctor, she was originally just supposed to be wearing a miniskirt and stuff. And she kind of objected to that. And John Pertwee backed her up and said, no, that's ridiculous. She should be wearing exactly the same mining gear as well. So you can see, even if it's not in the story, in the actual making of, you can see those issues being taken board and that kind of what's the word? That kind of feminist debate, if you like.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Actually happening on the set, and that I find that really interesting in itself.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for talking to us. And if you've never seen Doctor Who and the Silurians, but you want to give it a go, it's available on DVD and download stores. Links below. There's just time to mention an awesome video made for us by action figure builder Jimmy Wolfe, who's turned me into a Doctor Who dolly. Amazing. But please, don't try chopping up your toys at home. Next week, Michelle Gomez helps us tell our vervoids from our marshmen. Bye.
Bye.